Well, I think that we're in this kind of holding pattern where there isn't any path to registering a legitimate digital currency that will be acceptable to the regulators. But and the existing stuff is not acceptable. So there's going to have to be a transition over the next 24 to 48 months. And eventually, I would say eventually we'll see trillions of dollars circulating on mobile phones that will be a digital currency, and it will be something different, something in between what truly permissionless cryptocurrency is and then what the CBDC thing might be.
The executive chairman and co-founder of Microstrategy, Michael Saylor, shares his opinions on the probable introduction of a central bank digital currency, CBDC, in the United States. Saylor claims in a recent interview that the world's largest decentralized crypto asset, Bitcoin, will experience increased interest because of worries about the possible drawbacks of a digital currency, such as mass surveillance of how people spend their money. I am confident that the vast majority of people are vehemently opposed to CBDC, and I would say that a respectable majority of politicians are also opposed to it. However, a small group of the wing doesn't trust anyone and wants to impose authority over everyone. Heck, they could even be curious to know how you spend $50 at some point. Saylor remarked, and that's the political control freaks. Saylor predicted a fierce congressional debate over a U.S. CBDC, and expressed uncertainty that legislators will reach an agreement on the topic in the near future. Technically speaking, Saylor wonders how long it will take the government to figure out how to produce a digital replica of the dollar. The power of the government and the business sector to manage money and make it challenging for people to spend their money freely will, however, become more widely recognized as the technology approaches reality, in his opinion. Let's watch the video to hear from Michael on why legalizing CBDCs, especially in the United States, would be a very poor idea.
Right now, the only form of digital dollar circulating is cryptocurrency like stablecoin. And that represents one extreme, which is the dollar circulating non-KYC in a dark pool. The other extreme would be a CBDC, a dollar issued centrally by the government, controlled by the government, where they have transparency and control of every transaction. I think that politically, the libertarians would like to see the former. They'd like to see cryptocurrency circulating with zero control and oversight. I think that the authoritarians would probably like to see the latter. They'd like to see the currency circulating with complete government oversight. I think that in the political world, there's a lot of resistance to the CBDC. I don't think that we'll find a majority of politicians in either the Democratic or the Republican Party that will support a complete CBDC. So I think that it's a non-starter on Capitol Hill. I think the Republicans would block it, but I think the Democrats would block it too. And I think ultimately the banking establishment won't want it either, because a CBDC would be an example of disintermediating all the banks, starting with the big banks down to all the banks, and then what is their business. So I think that that there will be alarmists that will say, oh, the CBDC is coming, get ready. I think that will sell a lot of Bitcoin. I think a lot of people will go and they will buy Bitcoin and you'll get a lot of campaign donations, right? But I think ultimately the political settlement will be digital currency will come not in the form of a stable coin. I think that they will eventually wind down because that's too much freedom. And the regulators are winding them down, like the Wells notice to BUSD, like the Custodia denial letter, like the move by the Canadian regulators to prevent you from trading stablecoins on crypto exchanges in Canada, like the denial of Tether in the US. So I think the regulators will move to clamp down on any non-KYC digital dollars. I think that no one is putting forth any CBDC legislation right now that I can see. There's no credibility there, a consensus. I think we're probably headed toward less digital currency, like Right now, there's $140 billion. At the peak, there were probably $160 billion of digital currency trading between Tether and Circle and other coins and UST. And I think we've already peaked, and I think we're going toward less of that. And then at some point, they will restart the digital currency initiative, and it will be an FDIC-insured bank approved by the Federal Reserve and the Treasury that they trust. And there will be a negotiated set of controls, like more than $10,000 will be reported and less than $10,000 will not be reported, and the records will be held by the bank and not by the U.S. government. And the libertarians won't like it, right? It won't make them happy. It's too much control. But at the end of the day, the authoritarians won't like it because it'll be too little control. But the United States has already shown that it's willing to actually use banks and bank wires to move money around and let JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and Citigroup do whatever they're going to do. The digital currency of every country will reflect the politics of the country and the philosophy of the country. So in a place where there are no property rights, a Korea or a Cuba, they'll have completely overbearing implementations. In China, there'll probably be a very tight, transparent implementation because they're much more comfortable with that. They're more authoritarian. Every country in Europe has a different view. The point I would make there is there's an overwhelming demand for dollars, not euros. If you look at the digital currency demand, people would choose a digital dollar 97 or 98 to 1, 100x as often as a digital euro, even though they look similar. Nobody wants the euro, they want the dollar. And if you read the Custodia denial letter, the regulators made very clear that under no circumstance will they allow any bank in the world to issue a digital dollar that can circulate non-KYC. And that means no European country is going to issue a digital dollar. And of course, the conundrum is no European country has the power to issue the digital euro. The central bank of the EU is going to shut down Norway or Sweden. Sorry, I'm going to get myself in trouble. I better make sure I pick countries that are on the euro. They're not going to let any country that uses the euro issue a digital euro. And so there's going to be a massive political process in the EU Parliament over the nature of that instrument. They will resolve it based upon what the European Union feels. It might be more authoritarian than the US. It will be irrelevant to the question of the digital dollar because the decision of what the digital dollar is going to be decided in DC. And I don't see either the Republicans or the Democrats endorsing a CBDC right now. So I can't speak to the future of the digital ruble or the digital CNY, right? I mean, ultimately, that's a local political situation. What I can say is the world wants dollars. It wants dollars 100x more than it wants any of these other currencies. The dollar is the world reserve currency. The decision will be made by financial regulators in the United States in a dialogue with the legislators. I read thousands of pages of all the legal filings by the regulators, and, they have hearings in Congress. I don't read the headline on Twitter. I listen to every minute of the 8 hours of the hearings. I listen to every utterance of every congressperson and every legislator. And so the last thing I did is listen to 9 hours of congressional hearings by the House Financial Services Committee. The first 6 hours grilling Gary Gensler on securities. The next 3 hours on stablecoin. There is one piece of legislation in Capitol Hill related to stablecoins. This is what it says. You're not allowed to issue algorithmic stablecoins like Do Kwon did. That's a bad thing. And then no one's allowed to issue a stablecoin unless the Federal Reserve says you're allowed to issue it, but we don't know how that'll happen ever, and there's no time frame to do that. So in essence, they said, you can't do this thing, and you can't do anything else, and there's no plan to be able to do anything else. That's what the bill says. Then the Congress people went on to speak about it. The Democrats said, we don't agree with this bill. The Republicans talked about whether or not, there should be a way to create a stable coin. No conclusion was made. There is no time frame to agree on a bipartisan bill. That meaning there is no way that there's going to be an agreement between the House and the Senate. There's no way there's going to be a bipartisan agreement, and there is no bill. There isn't even an idea to object to yet. And that's the most advanced piece of legislation with regard to digital assets. Everything else, not even on the table.
The cryptocurrency community in Pakistan is currently faced with a choice: submit to the prohibition and risk losing their assets and chances, or rebel and run the risk of suffering sanctions and legal repercussions. The restrictions imposed by the global money laundering watchdog for remaining off of its list of nations subject to greater monitoring, according to Pakistan's State Minister of State for Finance and Revenue, prevent the country from legalizing cryptocurrency. Despite the Financial Action Task Force's denial of the accusations, we still don't know what actually happened between the parties. Nevertheless, there are many obstacles that cryptocurrencies as a whole must overcome in order to gain widespread acceptance. Don't hesitate to give us a like, subscribe, and enable notifications for upcoming videos if you liked the video. I appreciate you guys for watching this video.